Title: The Haunting Journey. The train's engine rumbled like a slumbering beast as it sliced through the thick, ghostly fog that hung in the forest like a shroud. Sarah gazed out of the window, her breath leaving fleeting imprints on the cold glass. She had heard the rumors, but she wasn't one to believe in ghost stories. It was just a late-night train journey, she assured herself. The car was nearly empty, save for a few scattered passengers. One of them, however, drew her attention. A man, seated across the aisle, stared out of the window with an expression that sent shivers down her spine. His name was Thomas. As Sarah settled into her seat, she couldn't help but ask, "Are you okay?" Thomas's eyes shifted to meet hers, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of fear before he composed himself and nodded. "Yes, I'm fine. Just lost in thought, you could say." Sarah turned her gaze back to the fog-shrouded landscape outside. The unsettling feeling didn't dissipate. She had chosen this train ride to escape her own thoughts, her own ghosts. Little did she know, it was about to become an eerie journey she would never forget. Hours passed, and Sarah's skepticism slowly gave way to unease. The train began to make strange noises, clattering, whispering, and sighing. She glanced at Thomas, who seemed unfazed, his gaze locked on the shifting shadows beyond the window. "Is this normal for this train?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. Thomas turned to her, his face etched with concern. "No, it's not. You see, this train has a dark history. It's said to be haunted." Sarah chuckled, thinking he was joking. "Haunted? Come on, I don't believe in ghosts." Thomas leaned in closer, his eyes revealing a story that begged to be told. "I didn't believe in them either until I boarded this train. There's something about this forest, something that lures spirits to it. They say that it's the souls of those who have met untimely deaths on these tracks, and they're not at peace." Sarah shivered, her skepticism challenged by the raw emotion in Thomas's voice. She could no longer ignore the eerie feeling that had settled over her. As the night deepened, the train continued to meander through the mist, revealing glimpses of an ancient, overgrown cemetery through the trees. The gravestones stood like silent sentinels, their inscriptions obscured by time and weather. It sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The strange events on the train escalated. The lights flickered ominously, casting unsettling shadows in the compartment. Whispers, too faint to discern, echoed through the corridor outside. And then came the first glimpse of something truly terrifying. A figure, pale and ghostly, appeared at the end of the aisle. Sarah's heart pounded as she watched it glide towards them. Her skepticism had evaporated, replaced by an icy dread. "Thomas, do you see that?" she whispered, her voice quivering. Thomas nodded, his eyes locked onto the approaching apparition. "Yes, I do. It's one of them, the restless souls." As the ghostly figure drew near, its hollow eyes met Sarah's. She felt a cold, clammy hand graze her shoulder, and a shiver of terror coursed through her veins. The ghostly passenger passed through her, and she let out a blood-curdling scream. Panic swept through the compartment as other passengers realized the spectral presence. Some cried out, while others cowered in their seats, paralyzed by fear. Sarah and Thomas, however, remained determined to uncover the truth. The train's eerie journey continued, with more apparitions appearing and vanishing like the fog itself. Thomas, now visibly shaken, explained that these souls were trying to communicate, to tell their stories. But their torment made it impossible to discern their messages. As the night drew to a close, the train approached its final destination. Sarah and Thomas found themselves in the last car, where the ghostly presence was strongest. The train came to a screeching halt, and the apparitions congregated around them. The spectral figures reached out, their hands imploring, their eyes pleading. Sarah and Thomas could feel their despair, their longing for release. Amidst the chaos, Thomas finally understood their message, deciphering the names and stories of the lost souls. Suddenly, the air became heavy with an otherworldly energy. The train compartment seemed to warp and twist, and the apparitions grew more desperate. As the train lurched forward, Sarah and Thomas found themselves hurtling into an ethereal abyss. In an instant, the forest and the ghostly train vanished, and the passengers were left in the stillness of the real world. Their journey had reached its end, but the memories of that haunting night would remain with them forever. As they stepped off the train, Sarah and Thomas exchanged a knowing glance, their skepticism replaced by a profound understanding of the supernatural. The haunting journey had tested their beliefs and forever altered the course of their lives. In the end, the train ride wasn't just a simple journey through a fog-covered forest. It was a chilling encounter with the unknown, a revelation of the spirits that lingered in the shadows, and a reminder that some mysteries are better left unexplored. Title: The Abandoned Road. Mia stood on the desolate highway, the fog rolling in like a sinister omen. She had lost track of time and distance, her thumb out, hitchhiking through this lonely, moonlit stretch of road. Her destination seemed farther away than ever, and her weariness made her desperate. The barren landscape before her held a malevolent silence, a silence that seemed to swallow her pleas for a ride. The night was a shroud of uncertainty, but Mia's desperation overrode her sense of caution. She yearned for the warmth and safety of a vehicle. Just when she thought her luck had run out, the throaty growl of a diesel engine broke the eerie silence. A pair of headlights appeared in the distance, and Mia's heart leaped with hope. The truck approached, its massive form casting an imposing shadow over Mia. It was a monolithic presence on the desolate highway, and as it pulled to a halt beside her, the driver's window lowered to reveal a middle-aged man, his eyes obscured by shadows. "Need a ride, darlin'?" he grumbled, his voice a low growl that matched the truck's engine. Mia hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to walk away, but her desperation compelled her to accept. "Yes, please. I've been waiting for hours." The truck driver leaned over and unlocked the passenger door. "Hop in." As Mia climbed into the cab, a shiver ran down her spine. The interior was in stark contrast to the massive, rumbling machine she had seen from the outside. It was eerily tidy, almost sterile, and devoid of any personal touches. She caught glimpses of strange symbols etched into the dashboard, but she couldn't make them out in the dim light. "Name's Bill," the truck driver offered, his eyes flicking toward her for a moment. His gaze was cold, unsettling. "Mia," she replied cautiously. Bill accelerated, and the highway stretched out before them, dark and unwelcoming. The fog clung to the barren landscape like a sinister embrace, hiding whatever secrets it held. Mia's unease grew with each passing mile, and the silence between them felt suffocating. "What brings you out here, Mia?" Bill finally asked, his voice still low and gruff. "Just trying to get to the next town," Mia replied, trying to sound casual. The road ahead seemed endless, and Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She glanced at the symbols on the dashboard once more, realizing they resembled strange sigils. Her heart raced as she wondered about their significance. As they continued down the lonely highway, strange events unfolded. Unexplained apparitions, fleeting shadows in the fog, appeared at the edge of Mia's vision. Bill, however, seemed unfazed. He drove on, his eyes locked on the road, seemingly indifferent to the bizarre occurrences. Mia's unease grew into sheer terror as the apparitions became more vivid and terrifying. Ghostly figures loomed in front of the truck, their eyes hollow and despairing. Some seemed to reach out for her, and the feeling of their clammy touch sent shivers down her spine. "Bill, do you see them?" she finally asked, her voice quivering. Bill cast a brief, knowing glance at her. "I've seen them many times. It's part of the road." Mia's pulse quickened, and the malevolent atmosphere weighed her down. She realized with horror that she had become part of a nightmarish journey, entangled in the horrors of the desolate highway. She needed to escape, to find a way out. "Stop the truck," Mia cried out, her fear spiking. "I need to get out. Now." Bill ignored her, his foot pressing down on the accelerator. The apparitions outside the window grew more aggressive, their forms becoming more defined and grotesque. Some of them began to reach into the cab, their ghastly hands clawing at Mia. Mia fought to free herself from the spectral hands, her heart pounding with terror. She couldn't bear to become one of them, a lost soul forever bound to this forsaken road. Her mind raced for a way out, and her eyes caught a glint of something sharp on the floor of the truck. With all her strength, Mia seized the object and thrust it toward the driver's side, causing Bill to swerve and lose control of the truck. The massive vehicle careened off the highway and into a ditch, coming to a screeching halt. Mia tumbled out of the cab, her heart racing, and her breath coming in panicked gasps. The apparitions had vanished, and the moonlit highway was empty once more. Mia realized she had narrowly escaped a terrifying fate. She watched as the truck remained immobile, its engine silent. With her heart still pounding, Mia made her way back to the highway. She knew she had to continue her journey on foot, no matter how far it was to the next town. She couldn't stay on that cursed road a moment longer. As she walked away, she looked back at the truck one last time, its engine still silent, its eerie symbols hidden in the darkness. Mia had survived the horrors of the abandoned road, but the memory of that night would haunt her for the rest of her days. The moon cast a pale light on her path, and she quickened her pace, determined to leave the malevolent highway behind. She had learned a chilling lesson about the consequences of rash decisions and the horrors that lurk in remote, forgotten places. Mia would carry that knowledge with her, a solemn reminder of the night she narrowly escaped the sinister embrace of the haunted road. Title: The Wandering Inn. As the storm unleashed its fury upon the small, isolated town, Alex and Emily found themselves drenched and disoriented. The winding road had led them to a place they hadn't planned to visit, an inn, seemingly abandoned, hidden away in the heart of the fog-shrouded town. Desperation compelled them to seek shelter, and the inn appeared to be their only refuge. Its time-worn facade was eerie, yet inviting, as if it beckoned them in with secrets and mysteries to unravel. The couple entered, the creaking of the heavy wooden door echoing through the empty hallway. A dim, flickering candle illuminated the inn's neglected interior. Dust-covered furniture and tattered curtains gave the place an aura of melancholy, as if it had been forgotten by time. Their footsteps seemed to resonate through the silence as they ventured deeper into the inn, searching for any signs of life. Their calls for assistance went unanswered, and an unsettling feeling began to settle in the pit of their stomachs. It was as though the inn absorbed their voices, leaving them unheard in the vast emptiness that surrounded them. Finally, a figure appeared at the end of the hallway, an elderly innkeeper, his form shrouded in shadows. His voice quivered as he welcomed the couple, introducing himself as Mr. Hargrove. "You're fortunate to have found this place," he said, his gaze shrouded in a veil of secrecy. "A terrible storm brews outside, and there's no other shelter for miles." Alex and Emily exchanged a hesitant glance but chose to stay, their need for refuge outweighing their unease. The inn's eccentricity only deepened their curiosity. The innkeeper led them to a musty room, its cold stone walls damp from the constant presence of fog. He promised them warmth, a hearty meal, and a good night's rest, reassuring them that the inn was filled with travelers seeking respite from the storm. However, as they made their way to the common dining area, their expectations were shattered. The room was filled with empty chairs, plates of untouched food, and wine glasses filled with cobwebs. A fire flickered in the hearth, but no other guests were to be seen. Mr. Hargrove, though, remained calm and jovial. "Our other guests prefer to keep to themselves. Don't be concerned." Alex and Emily shared their discomfort but had no choice but to take their seats. Their appetite had waned in the shadow of the odd occurrences that surrounded them, but they were determined to find solace from the tempest raging outside. As they dug into their meal, they couldn't help but feel watched. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the creaking floorboards beneath their feet echoed as if other unseen guests moved about. Emily couldn't help but voice her concern. "Mr. Hargrove, we haven't seen any other guests here. Are we truly alone?" The innkeeper's face remained impassive as he replied, "Oh, my dear, you're not alone. You'll see them soon enough." A chill ran down their spines, and a sense of foreboding grew within them. They had to uncover the inn's dark secrets, to understand why it was shrouded in such mystery. That night, as they retired to their room, their curiosity overcame their unease. They decided to explore the inn further while Mr. Hargrove rested. What they discovered would haunt them forever. The inn was a labyrinth of hidden passages, secret doors, and rooms shrouded in darkness. They stumbled upon rooms filled with odd, arcane artifacts and unsettling paintings that seemed to move when their gazes fell upon them. It was in one of these hidden chambers that they found a ledger, dusty and ancient, filled with the names of countless travelers who had sought refuge within the inn. But it was the final entry that sent shivers down their spines, a list of the names of those who had entered but never departed. Terrified, they knew they had to confront the innkeeper and demand answers. The deeper they ventured into the inn's labyrinth, the more supernatural occurrences they encountered. Mirrors showed distorted reflections, revealing the truth behind the inn's cursed history. They saw apparitions of lost souls, their eyes hollow and filled with torment. Their whispers seemed to speak of the inn's dark secrets and its insatiable hunger for souls. Emily and Alex finally confronted Mr. Hargrove, who revealed his true form, a malevolent spirit bound to the inn. He had lured travelers seeking refuge into his web of deception for centuries, using their souls to prolong his own existence. The inn itself was a cursed entity, a living, breathing monster that fed on the despair and fear of its victims. The couple fought to escape, their terror driving them to the edge of their strength. But the inn's supernatural power was overwhelming, its walls shifting and closing in on them. Desperate, they recited an incantation from an old, dusty tome they had discovered, a spell that would bind the inn and its malevolent spirit to the shadows, forever sealing its dark secrets. As they chanted the incantation, the inn trembled, and the apparitions faded into nothingness. Mr. Hargrove's form dissolved into mist, and the ancient ledger crumbled into dust. The inn itself seemed to breathe a final, mournful sigh before it fell silent and still. The storm outside had abated, and the couple emerged from the inn's labyrinth, their faces etched with exhaustion and the horrors they had witnessed. The forsaken inn, once a place of terror, was now nothing more than a crumbling, abandoned structure free from its malevolent curse. As they left the town behind, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of the horrors they had faced, they couldn't help but feel grateful to have escaped the clutches of the wandering inn. It was a night they would never forget, a night that had tested their trust and shown them the true price of seeking refuge in the unknown. Title: The Never-Ending Bus Ride. Jake had lost track of time when he arrived at the unassuming bus stop. The fog hung thick in the air, as though the world had vanished beyond the mist. He'd been waiting for what felt like hours, seeking refuge from his troubles. The bus, when it arrived, was unlike any he had ever seen before. The vehicle stood before him, an ominous silhouette, its windows opaque and its destination sign blank. The air was heavy with an eerie stillness as the door creaked open, and a figure in a tattered uniform beckoned him aboard. The spectral bus driver's gaze held a haunting wisdom, as if he had been on this journey for an eternity. "Tickets, please," the driver murmured, his voice a haunting echo that sent shivers down Jake's spine. Jake handed over his fare, and with a nod, the driver motioned for him to take a seat. The bus's interior was dimly lit, its flickering overhead lights casting strange, elongated shadows on the worn, frayed seats. Jake chose an empty row and settled in, his unease growing as the bus started moving. The fog outside seemed impenetrable, hiding any trace of the world beyond. Jake had never seen fog so thick, so suffocating. He glanced around, searching for fellow passengers, but the bus was empty, save for himself and the spectral driver. There were no stops, no other commuters, and no signs of life. The minutes turned into hours as Jake's apprehension deepened. The bus ride seemed to be endless, the fog outside obscuring any landmarks or signs of civilization. He thought of asking the driver about the duration of the journey, but the words caught in his throat. He couldn't shake the feeling that the driver already knew his question. Time itself seemed to warp within the bus's confines. Jake's watch stopped ticking, and the only sense of time came from the bus's low hum and the continuous motion through the fog. Jake's surroundings became a surreal, disorienting dreamscape. He closed his eyes, hoping to escape the sense of dislocation. When he opened them again, the scene had shifted. The bus was full, its seats occupied by a host of otherworldly passengers. Their features were twisted and grotesque, their eyes hollow and empty. They stared at Jake with an intensity that sent a chill through his very soul. Panicking, he turned to the driver, seeking an explanation, but the spectral figure was unfazed. "Welcome, Jake," the driver whispered, his voice echoing in Jake's mind. "You are not alone in this journey." The bus continued its mysterious route, and Jake felt himself caught in an endless loop. The same scenes and passengers repeated, each time with subtle variations that added to his disorientation. He watched in horror as some passengers disembarked into the fog, vanishing into the void beyond. Jake became a prisoner of the never-ending bus ride, each loop more disorienting than the last. Time lost its meaning as he struggled to make sense of the surreal and haunting reality he had been thrust into. Desperation drove him to confront the spectral driver, demanding answers to the nature of the journey. The driver's response filled Jake with a sense of hopelessness. "This is the bus to nowhere, Jake," the driver intoned. "A purgatory of endless loops, where travelers are trapped in the void between worlds. You are now a passenger, forever adrift." Jake's mind reeled, his sense of reality unraveling as the bus continued its ceaseless journey. His memories faded, and he became one with the spectral passengers, trapped in a cycle of despair and disorientation. As the bus hurtled through the foggy void, Jake felt himself slipping further into the abyss. He watched in horror as his own reflection in the bus's fog-covered windows distorted and twisted, his features contorting into grotesque shapes. Then, a revelation struck him with a terrible force. The passengers, the fog, the spectral driver, they were all reflections of his own fear, guilt, and torment. The bus was a manifestation of his own personal hell, a nightmarish journey through the darkest corners of his soul. Desperation gave way to a realization that he had to break free from the cycle, to confront his own demons and face the darkness within himself. With newfound determination, he reached out to the spectral driver and uttered a single word: "Stop." The bus shuddered, its infinite journey disrupted by Jake's newfound resolve. The fog outside began to dissipate, revealing a glimmer of light in the distance. The spectral passengers and the haunting landscape faded into nothingness. With a final, triumphant effort, Jake forced the bus to a halt. The doors opened, and he stepped out into the blinding light, his torment left behind in the fog. The endless journey had come to an end. Jake found himself standing at a familiar bus stop, the world no longer obscured by the suffocating fog. The spectral bus was nowhere to be seen, and the horrors that had plagued him were but distant memories. He had faced his own inner demons and emerged from the never-ending bus ride, forever changed. As he walked away from the bus stop, his heart heavy with the weight of his experiences, he couldn't help but wonder if the spectral driver had been a reflection of his own fears and guilt, a manifestation of his own personal hell. The never-ending bus ride had been a journey through the darkest corners of his soul, a surreal and disorienting exploration of the fear of being lost in the void. Title: The Mysterious Train Station. The relentless downpour had left Lucy drenched and shivering, her hair plastered to her face as she stumbled upon the Eerie train station. The storm raged on, casting long, twisted shadows through the station's shattered windows and crumbling structure. She had no recollection of how she had arrived here, lost in an unfamiliar place that felt like a forgotten relic from another era. The station was barren, with no sign of life or the comfort of shelter, except for a dim, flickering bulb that barely illuminated the cavernous space. As Lucy took refuge from the storm, she couldn't help but feel a creeping unease. The atmosphere was heavy with an uncanny silence, broken only by the howling wind and the relentless rain drumming against the roof. Her footsteps echoed eerily on the rain-soaked platform. Just as she considered venturing back into the storm, a voice broke the silence. "Good evening, miss." Startled, Lucy spun around to find a spectral figure standing on the platform, his form flickering like a distant memory. He was dressed in the attire of a station master from a bygone era, his face etched with an eerie serenity. "Are you lost, miss?" the spectral figure inquired. Lucy's voice trembled as she replied, I don't know how I got here. I just need shelter from the storm." The spectral station master nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "This place has a way of drawing in those who are lost. You see, it's not just a station, it's a repository of memories." Lucy's curiosity was piqued, and her apprehension began to ebb. She took a hesitant step toward the spectral figure, her eyes searching the dimly lit station. "What happened here? Why is this place so haunting?" The station master's spectral gaze turned distant as he began to recount the station's history. It had once been a bustling hub, where passengers embarked on journeys filled with hope, dreams, and adventures. But the station had seen its share of tragedy, too, as many travelers never returned. As he spoke, the station seemed to come to life. Flickering lights in the distance hinted at the approach of an ethereal train, its wheels clacking against the rails, and its ghostly passengers disembarking, their faces etched with sadness and despair. Lucy watched in awe as the ghostly train came to a halt, its spectral passengers departing one by one. The station master explained that they were lost souls, bound to the station by their unfinished business and the memories of their journey. The train's passengers had been trapped in a never-ending cycle, reliving their fateful journeys each night, searching for something they had lost. The station itself had become a liminal space, a bridge between the living and the dead. Lucy was drawn deeper into the station's haunting history. Unable to resist the allure of the past, she soon realized that her own memories were fading, replaced by those of the spectral passengers. Their stories and sorrows became her own, and she found herself reliving moments from their lives. The spectral station master urged her to confront the memories and fears that had brought her here, to break free from the endless cycle of the station. He guided her through the haunting recollections of the passengers, helping her uncover the truth about their journeys and the secrets that bound them to the station. As she delved deeper into the past, Lucy's connection with the spectral passengers grew stronger. She began to understand the power of memories, the weight of unfulfilled dreams, and the torment of being lost in the in-between. Together with the spectral station master, Lucy embarked on a journey to help the lost souls find closure, to confront their fears and regrets. With each memory she confronted, each haunting moment she relived, the station's ethereal cycle began to unravel. The station's once pervasive gloom began to dissipate as the lost passengers found their way home, their journeys finally reaching their long-awaited conclusions. The station master's form grew fainter as he, too, found solace in the resolution of his own unfinished business. With a final, bittersweet farewell, The spectral station master smiled at Lucy and uttered, "Thank you for helping us find our way, miss." The once ghostly train pulled away from the platform, its passengers finally at peace, their memories forever etched in the station's history. Lucy was left standing alone in the dimly lit station. But her own memories and her sense of self had been restored. As the storm outside began to subside, Lucy walked back into the world, her heart heavy with the experiences of the haunted train station. She had discovered the allure of the past, the power of memories, and the courage to confront her own fears and regrets. The station had been a place of haunting, but it had also been a place of redemption. Lucy had unlocked the secrets of the station, helping the lost souls find their way home, and in doing so, she had found her own way back to the living. The Eerie train station, once a liminal space between the living and the dead, had now become a place of solace and resolution. It was a testament to the enduring power of memories, the allure of the past, and the redemption of lost souls. Title: The Forgotten Tunnel. Mark had always been drawn to the forbidden and the forgotten. The world was filled with hidden places, secret corners that called out to his adventurous spirit. And when he heard the chilling legends of the abandoned railway tunnel, he couldn't resist the lure of the unknown. The tunnel was a relic of the past, an eerie, pitch-black void that had been sealed off from the world for decades. Its chilling stories spoke of sinister secrets and malevolent forces that had claimed the lives of those who dared to venture within. It was said that once you entered the tunnel, you'd never return. As Mark stood before the yawning darkness of the tunnel's entrance, a shiver ran down his spine. The night was moonless, and the surrounding woods seemed to recede in fear of what lay beyond. He took a deep breath, his sense of adventure overcoming his unease, and stepped into the abyss. The darkness was absolute, an inky void that swallowed his flashlight's feeble beam. The tunnel's walls were damp, the air heavy with a musty, oppressive odor. His footsteps echoed through the silence, magnified by the narrow space, and the tunnel seemed to stretch into eternity. As Mark ventured deeper into the tunnel, he began to hear faint, echoing whispers that filled the void. The voices seemed to originate from all around him, as if the very walls were speaking. They spoke of long-forgotten horrors, of souls trapped in eternal torment, and of the darkness that lurked within the tunnel's depths. His heart raced, and a growing sense of dread gnawed at his soul. But the further he ventured, the more he felt compelled to explore, to unravel the mysteries that the tunnel held. The legends, he told himself, were nothing more than stories, the product of an overactive imagination. As Mark continued to descend into the bowels of the tunnel, he began to feel a malevolent presence, an unseen force that seemed to encroach upon him. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, whispering cruel promises and terrible secrets. He was no longer alone in the darkness. The air grew colder, and a sense of claustrophobia descended upon him. The walls of the tunnel seemed to close in, as if the very earth itself sought to imprison him. His flashlight flickered and dimmed, plunging him into darkness. Panic set in as he fumbled to restore the light. Amid the suffocating blackness, Mark's fingers brushed against something cold and clammy. He recoiled in horror as his flashlight's beam revealed a decaying hand, reaching out from the shadows. It was an apparition, its face twisted in anguish, its hollow eyes fixed on him. The specter's voice joined the echoing whispers, its words a chorus of despair and torment. It spoke of the tunnel's sinister past, of those who had perished within its depths, and of the malevolent force that sought to claim Mark's soul. The darkness, it warned, was an insatiable hunger that devoured all who dared to enter. Terrified, Mark fled deeper into the tunnel, the specter's mournful cries echoing in his ears. The malevolent presence pursued him, the very darkness itself clawing at his heels. He knew he was running out of time, that the tunnel's secrets were closing in on him. As he reached the tunnel's farthest depths, Mark stumbled upon a grotesque sight, an ancient, rusted gate that led to a hidden chamber. Its iron bars bore eerie symbols, etched into the metal with malevolent intent. As he peered through the gate, he saw a nightmarish scene within. The chamber held the remains of those who had never escaped the tunnel's grip, their bodies frozen in agony, their souls trapped in eternal torment. The malevolent force had claimed them, and it sought to claim Mark as well. In the chamber's center, a malevolent presence coalesced, a formless darkness that hungered for his soul. It whispered promises of power and knowledge, of the allure of the unknown. It promised to reveal the tunnel's true purpose, but at a horrifying cost. Mark's heart pounded as he realized the truth of the tunnel, the sinister secret hidden within its depths. The malevolent force sought to consume his very being, to add his soul to the chorus of the lost. With a final, desperate act, Mark summoned his remaining strength and uttered a prayer, a plea for salvation. The force recoiled, shrieking in agony, its malevolence shattered by the power of his words. The chamber disintegrated into darkness, the apparitions and the malevolent presence banished forever. Mark's flashlight flickered back to life, revealing the tunnel's empty depths, free from the malevolence that had haunted it for so long. With a heavy heart and a newfound sense of the horrors that lurked in the darkness, Mark retraced his steps, making his way back to the tunnel's entrance. He had survived the malevolent force that sought to claim his soul, but the experience had left its mark, a chilling reminder of the horror of the unknown. As he stepped out into the night, the tunnel's yawning mouth vanished into the surrounding darkness, a place forever sealed away from the world. Mark had ventured into the forgotten tunnel and returned to the living, forever changed by the encounter with the malevolent force that lurked within. Title: The Sinister Rest Stop. John had been driving for hours on the desolate highway, the monotonous hum of the engine and the never-ending stretch of road lulling him into a state of weary exhaustion. His eyes were heavy, and his mind craved the comfort of rest. He had hoped to find a welcoming rest stop, but what he stumbled upon was anything but ordinary. The rest stop appeared isolated, its neon sign flickering ominously in the distance. As he pulled into the dimly lit parking lot, a sense of unease washed over him. The place was run down, and an eerie silence hung heavy in the air. But it was the family that greeted him that sent shivers down his spine. They seemed like a portrait of bygone times, dressed in outdated, threadbare clothing. Their features were uncanny, their smiles strained and unsettling. The father, mother, and 2 children stood there, their eyes cold and unblinking. "Welcome, weary traveler," the father said with a peculiar courtesy. "You've arrived just in time. We've been expecting you." The family's presence and their unsettling politeness raised alarm bells in John's mind, but he was too tired to question their motives. He nodded in gratitude and followed them to a dimly lit building that served as the rest stop's main office. As he entered the building, John couldn't help but feel the weight of the family's stares upon him. The walls were adorned with faded photographs of travelers who had come before him, their faces filled with a sense of dread. He tried to shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The family offered him food and a place to rest, their hospitality growing increasingly strange. They insisted he join them for dinner, a meal that was both peculiar and unsettling. The food tasted off, and John couldn't bring himself to eat more than a few bites. As the night deepened, the family gathered around him, their eyes locked onto his with a haunting intensity. They began to speak of the rest stop's history, a sinister tale of travelers who had come and never left, of rituals that bound them to the place for eternity. John listened in growing horror, realizing that he had stumbled upon a place that defied reason and logic. He had become part of something far more sinister than he could have imagined. The family revealed their true nature, their forms shifting and contorting into something grotesque and inhuman. They had lured him to the rest stop, bound by a malevolent force that compelled them to seek out weary travelers like him. The malevolent presence that had claimed the rest stop was a dark entity, a force that fed on the souls of those who entered. It had ensnared the family in a web of complacency and malevolence, using them as its agents to lure in unsuspecting victims. The family's ritualistic chants filled the air, their eerie voices blending with the whispers of countless souls trapped within the rest stop. John realized he had fallen into a trap, a place where time and reality twisted and contorted, where the boundaries between the living and the dead had dissolved. With a surge of determination, John fought to break free from the sinister family's grasp. He forced his way out of the rest stop's building, leaving the malevolent entity behind. The night air was cold and refreshing, but he knew he had to put as much distance as possible between himself and the rest stop. As he sped away on the highway, he watched in his rearview mirror as the rest stop receded into the distance. Its neon sign flickered, and the malevolent force within seemed to reach out, trying to pull him back into its grasp. John's heart raced, his thoughts consumed by the horrors he had witnessed. He had escaped the sinister rest stop, but he knew that it would continue to lure in unsuspecting travelers, its malevolent force bound to the desolate highway. The consequences of stopping in the wrong place had become all too real for John. He had trusted appearances, and it had nearly cost him his soul. As he drove into the night, he couldn't shake the feeling that the rest stop's dark history would continue to claim the unsuspecting, its malevolent presence forever lurking in the shadows. Title: The Whispering Woods. Lisa had always been drawn to the enigmatic beauty of the natural world. The untouched wilderness, with its secrets and untold stories, held an allure she couldn't resist. So when she heard of the dense, shadowy forest that locals called the Whispering Woods, she knew she had to explore it, hoping to capture its eerie beauty through her camera lens. As she ventured into the forest, the dense canopy of ancient trees cast an eerie twilight, and the woods were filled with inexplicable sounds. The whispers of leaves and the calls of unseen creatures surrounded her, creating an atmosphere that sent shivers down her spine. She felt like a trespasser in a place where the boundaries between the living and the unseen were blurred. The forest had an unsettling stillness about it. Lisa had expected to find a cacophony of life, but instead, it was as if the woods were holding their breath, as if ancient spirits watched her every move. Yet, her determination to capture the mystique of the Whispering Woods drove her deeper into the heart of the darkness. As she ventured further into the woods, she came across a forest ranger's station, nestled deep within the trees. The ranger, an older man with a weathered face, warned her about the wood's reputation. "These woods are unlike any other," he cautioned, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and reverence. "The Whispering Woods is home to ancient spirits, and they are not to be trifled with. You must be careful where you tread." Lisa nodded, taking his words to heart but determined to continue her exploration. She had already captured some striking images, and the allure of the Whispering Woods was too powerful to resist. As night began to fall, the forest took on a surreal and unsettling quality. Shadows danced in the moonlight, and the whispers of the leaves grew more pronounced. Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that the woods were trying to communicate with her, their voices hushed and mysterious. She set up her camera and began taking long exposure shots of the forest, hoping to capture the ethereal beauty that seemed to emanate from the trees. As her camera clicked, she sensed a presence nearby. A faint, otherworldly whisper filled the air, sending a shiver down her spine. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form shifting and indistinct. It was a spirit, an ancient entity bound to the Whispering Woods. It glided toward her, its eyes filled with a melancholic longing. Lisa's heart raced as she realized she was face to face with the spirit of the forest. The entity reached out, its hand passing through her, and in that moment, she felt a connection to something far older and more powerful than herself. The spirit's whispers grew more pronounced, and Lisa began to understand their meaning. The forest was cursed, a place where the spirits of the land were trapped in a never-ending cycle, seeking to communicate with the living. They yearned to break free from the boundaries that held them. As the night deepened, more spirits emerged from the shadows, their stories and longing filling Lisa's mind. They revealed the curse that had befallen the Whispering Woods, a curse tied to the ancient rituals of a lost civilization that had once thrived within these trees. Lisa knew that she had stumbled upon something extraordinary and inexplicable. The Whispering Woods held a darkness that transcended human understanding, a place where the spirits of the land were bound by the ancient rituals of the past. As the spirits continued to whisper their stories, Lisa realized that she had a role to play in their quest for freedom. She couldn't turn her back on the enigmatic beauty of the forest, nor on the spirits who sought to communicate with the living. With newfound resolve, she made a solemn promise to the spirits, vowing to help them break the curse and find peace. She began to investigate the ancient rituals and to seek out a way to release the spirits from their eternal torment. The Whispering Woods held secrets that defied explanation, but Lisa was determined to uncover the truth and to set the spirits free. She knew that her journey into the heart of the forest had only just begun, and the boundaries of human exploration would be tested as she delved deeper into the ancient mysteries of the Whispering Woods. Title: The Ghostly Shipwreck. Sarah had always been drawn to the mysteries of the past, and the stories of long-forgotten shipwrecks held a particular fascination for her. So, when she received word of a remote, fog-covered island with the remains of a shipwreck, she knew she had to investigate. It was a place where the secrets of history still lingered in the salt-tinged air. As her small boat approached the desolate island, Sarah could see the outlines of the shipwreck rising like a skeletal structure from the sandy shore. The fog that enveloped the island gave it an eerie and otherworldly atmosphere, and the cries of seagulls added to the unsettling ambience. With her camera and excavation tools in hand, Sarah disembarked and made her way towards the shipwreck's remains. The vessel's time-worn wood and rusted metal bore the scars of its watery ordeal. It had been abandoned, left to the mercy of the elements and the relentless passage of time. As she examined the shipwreck, Sarah couldn't help but feel the weight of history pressing down upon her. The ship had met its fate long ago, and its story was etched into its very bones. But what had caused the ship to meet such a tragic end? And why had it been left to rot on this forsaken island? As the day turned to night, the fog thickened, and Sarah was forced to set up camp near the shipwreck. She had uncovered several artifacts that hinted at the ship's past, including tattered journals and faded photographs. But there were gaps in the story, missing pieces that she was determined to uncover. As she settled into her makeshift camp, the island seemed to come alive with unsettling noises, faint whispers on the wind, the creaking of time-worn wood, and the distant echo of voices. She knew that she was not alone on the island, and the presence of these ghostly echoes sent a chill down her spine. That night, as she lay in her tent, Sarah was visited by a vivid dream. In the dream, she found herself aboard the ship, surrounded by a phantom crew. The spectral figures moved about the vessel, their forms hazy and indistinct, as they carried out their duties with an air of desperation and fear. At the center of it all stood the ship's captain, a figure who seemed more corporeal than the rest. He was a commanding presence, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. He pointed towards the ship's bow, his voice carrying an otherworldly weight. "Find the truth," he intoned, his words echoing in the dream. "Uncover the past, and you shall be free." The dream left Sarah shaken, and as she awoke in her tent, she couldn't shake the feeling that it held a message, a plea for her to unravel the ship's tragic history. She knew she had to delve deeper into the mysteries of the shipwreck, for the island's curse seemed to demand it. Over the following days, Sarah continued her exploration of the shipwreck, uncovering more artifacts and uncovering the missing pieces of the ship's story. The ship had been involved in a mutiny, a violent and deadly rebellion that had ultimately led to its demise. As she pieced together the events that had transpired on the ship, she realized that the captain had been the victim of a vengeful crew, betrayed by those he had once trusted. His spirit had remained on the island, unable to find rest, and he had sought out Sarah to uncover the truth and lift the curse that bound him. As she worked tirelessly to unearth the ship's history, Sarah could sense the presence of the captain growing stronger, his spectral form becoming more defined. The otherworldly whispers that had filled the island seemed to intensify, as if the spirits of the crew were watching her every move. With each revelation about the ship's past, the captain's anger and anguish grew more palpable. It was as if he longed for the truth to be exposed, for the consequences of the mutiny to be brought to light. Finally, as Sarah pieced together the final moments of the ship's tragic voyage, the captain appeared before her in all his spectral glory. His eyes held a mix of gratitude and sorrow, and he reached out to touch her with a hand that was both corporeal and ghostly. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with a sense of release. "You have uncovered the truth, and now I can finally find peace." As he spoke those words, a spectral wind swept through the island, carrying with it the echoes of the lost crew. The island seemed to sigh with relief, the fog lifting and the echoes fading into the distance. Sarah had uncovered the ship's history, and in doing so, she had lifted the curse that had bound the captain and his crew to the island. With a heavy heart, Sarah made her way back to her boat, leaving the island behind. The shipwreck, once a place of tragedy and torment, now stood as a testament to the enduring presence of the past. The spirits of the ship's crew had found their peace, and Sarah had played her part in uncovering the truth that had been lost to time. As she sailed away from the remote island, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the experience. She had uncovered the ship's history, and in doing so, she had witnessed the power of the past and the consequences of actions long forgotten. The ghostly shipwreck had left an indelible mark on her, a reminder of the enduring presence of the deceased and the mysteries of history that were waiting to be uncovered. Title: The Cursed Train Ticket. The thunderstorm raged overhead as James stood alone on a dark, deserted railway platform. Rain poured in relentless sheets, and the platform's awning offered little refuge. He was soaked to the bone, and his patience waned as the minutes ticked by, punctuated by the deafening thunder and flashes of lightning. James had been waiting for the train, but it was late, leaving him alone on the platform. He checked his wristwatch impatiently, the hands barely visible in the dim light. He needed to reach his destination, a journey that he had been dreading for years. Just as his hope began to wane, the train's piercing whistle broke through the storm. The engine's headlight pierced the darkness, and the train slowly came to a halt. The conductor stood by the open door, and his eyes seemed to bore into James's soul. He handed James a ticket, a small piece of paper that seemed unremarkable at first glance. But as James took the ticket, a shiver ran down his spine. The paper felt cold and malevolent, as if it held a dark secret. He boarded the train, the carriage nearly empty, and made his way to a seat by the window. As the train pulled away from the platform, James examined the ticket more closely. It bore an unfamiliar symbol, and the writing was in an ancient, indecipherable script. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeply wrong with the ticket, that it held a malevolent power that was beyond his understanding. The rain continued to pour outside, the storm growing more intense as the train sped through the dark, deserted countryside. James was the only passenger in his carriage, and an eerie silence hung heavy in the air. The conductor's eyes seemed to follow him, his gaze unrelenting. James's sense of unease grew as he realized that the train was not following its intended route. The landscape outside the window had become unfamiliar, and the storm seemed to have intensified, the rain lashing at the glass with a malevolent fury. As the train rumbled on, James began to hear whispers, faint and otherworldly. They seemed to come from all around him, their words impossible to discern. It was as if the very air was filled with voices that spoke of secrets and horrors that he could not fathom. The carriage lights flickered, and the passengers around him shifted in their seats, their faces shrouded in darkness. James could feel their presence, their malevolent intent. He realized that the passengers were not of the living but of the dead, souls trapped on the cursed train. The conductor approached, his presence casting a chilling shadow. He reached out for the ticket, and as he did, James realized that it was not the conductor's eyes that pierced his soul but the ticket itself. It held a malevolent power, a curse that had ensnared him. The conductor's voice was a haunting whisper, his words filled with a dark promise. "Your journey is one of reckoning, a journey into the past," he intoned. "You have been chosen to confront the consequences of your choices." The train's passengers shifted in their seats, their ghostly forms revealing their nightmarish appearances. They were the souls of those whom James had wronged in his past, their faces twisted in anguish and torment. They sought retribution, and the ticket had bound him to this cursed voyage. The train hurtled through the storm, and as it did, the passengers' voices grew louder, their accusations more pronounced. They spoke of betrayals and lies, of the pain and suffering that James had caused. The ticket collector's eyes bore into him, his gaze a relentless reminder of the curse that bound him. As James attempted to escape, the train seemed to stretch into infinity, its never-ending corridors and endless carriages a maze of torment. He was trapped in a nightmarish cycle, a place where his past actions had come back to haunt him. The curse of the ticket had brought him face to face with the consequences of his choices, a reckoning that he could not escape. The train's passengers sought revenge, and the ticket collector was the harbinger of their dark judgment. Desperation gripped James as he realized that he had no way to break the curse. He was trapped on the cursed train, bound to confront the ghosts of his past. The storm raged on outside, the rain a relentless torrent, and the train hurtled through the darkness, a vessel of torment and retribution. With each passing moment, the passengers' accusations grew louder, their faces more twisted in anguish. The ticket collector's eyes never left him, a constant reminder of the curse that bound him. As the train plunged deeper into the darkness, James's heart sank. He had made choices in his past that had caused pain and suffering, and now he was paying the price. The curse of the ticket had brought him to a place of reckoning, a place where the consequences of his actions could not be escaped. The train hurtled onward, and the curse of the ticket held him in its unrelenting grip. James had embarked on a journey into the past, a journey of reckoning and retribution, and there was no escape from the haunted train that carried him to his inevitable judgment.